So that's what they finally try to do.
Could you see me up there? Yeah.
Good morning, dzień dobry, welcome. A very, very warm welcome to the Polish Village Hall. Witam serdecznie. Mam nadzieję, że nasza dyskusja dzisiaj będzie bardzo, bardzo owocna. I know that our conversation this morning will be very enlightening and empowering, and that this will be an important moment as we take inspiration from one of the great leaders of the province of Nova Scotia. I would like to begin by acknowledging that our gathering this morning is taking place on the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. In welcoming everyone to the Polish Village Hall, I would like to invite you to speak with any of the members of the St. Michael's Polish Benefit Society to make your time in this facility as comfortable as possible. Bernie Larusik, the hall manager, is wearing the jacket, as am I, of the St. Michael's Polish Benefit Society, which was founded in 1909 and is the longest existing Polish organization in Canada, right here in Whitney Pier. In welcoming you, I do so humbly on behalf of a wonderful team from the CBU Tompkins Institute, the newly established network Kairos Cape Breton. This is an ecumenical, it's an interfaith network of faith communities that have come together because of their common concern for social justice. And even though this coming together happened for the first time in November, there's already been some really, really positive output. And of course, also on behalf of the St. Michael's Polish Benefit Society. I'd like to thank Joe Ripa for the background entertainment, which he always does so well. Donna Cooper for the beautiful coffee and tea and breakfast setup. Sajid Kochar, our resident videographer, has been part of the life of the Polish community in many, many ways and on many occasions. I'd also like to thank everyone who prepared the logistics for our coming together today. The book, An Honorable Life, beautiful book, well written, wise, by the Honorable Marianne Francis, will be available after our conversation, and Dr. Francis would be delighted to sign and personalize a copy for you. Alana Jackson from the CBU bookstore is coordinating the sales for us. Just to note that the sales are either cash or check today. And if cash becomes your preferred method, there is an ATM just half a block from here. So hopefully we'll make the book as accessible as possible, especially since Her Honor is with us and able to personalize it. It has been a delight to work with Reverend Phyllis Marsh on not only this gathering, of which she is an important part, but also as a leader in this community on a number of projects where faith communities and cultural organizations have come together. She is a real treasure, a real asset to this community. I'm humbled to be her friend. And I'd like to invite Reverend Phyllis to come forward for an opening reflection and also to formally introduce her owner. Reverend Phyllis Marsh, of course, pastor of St. Philip's African Orthodox Church.
I'm just her helper. As I was walking up front and looking at her honor, she always warns me that I should have my cane. I don't have it today, but I'm so happy to be here this morning, and it's so nice to see such a great turnout. I think that I would like to start with a prayer, though. Can you stand, please? In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. O Heavenly Father, in whom we live and move and have our being, we humbly pray Thee so to guide and govern us by the Holy Spirit, that in all the cares and occupations of our daily life, we may never forget Thee, but remember that we are ever walking in Thy sight. Dear Lord, this morning, bless our speaker. We lift her honor up to You in prayer, and we thank You for her gifted wisdom, which she so humbly will share with us this morning. And also for the food, for what we have received, may the Lord make us truly thankful. Bless the work and the hands of those who prepared it. In Jesus' name we do pray. Amen. You may be seated. Well, it's not often that you get an honor like this to be able to introduce a valuable member of our community. Her Honor, Dr. Mayanne Francis, was appointed to the Faculty of Management, School of Public Administration, as the first Distinguished Public Service Fellow in fall of 2005. You're going to notice that I have a tremor. Don't worry, just don't get seasick. I'll be okay. Dr. Francis served as Lieutenant Governor for the province of Nova Scotia from 2006 to 2012. She was the first African Nova Scotian and second woman to be appointed as the vice-regal representative. She is the recipient of 6 honorary degrees and an honorary diploma. She has served in many leadership roles, including chair of the board for the Atlantic School of Theology. Dr. Francis graduated from St. Mary's University with a Bachelor of Arts degree and a Master's in Public Administration from New York University. In addition to her list of credentials, Dr. Francis can add author. Nimbus Publishing published her first children's book, Mayanne's Train Ride, in October 2015, which was translated into French in 2018. Her memoir, Mayanne Francis, An Honorable Life, was released in June 2019 and was listed in the Hill Times list of 100 best nonfiction books in 2019. The Hill Times is Canada's politics and government newspaper. She is in much demand as a speaker. And you know, I just thought, Your Honor, that as I was thinking of you, the words that came to me is, yes, you can. And I think that's what you're going to give to our young people today. So God bless you.
Dr. Francis and I have had a few wonderful conversations before this morning, and Dr. Francis suggested, and I think it was an excellent request, that we do this in a fireside chat style. So we have the fake mantle behind me. And we reflected on the kinds of themes and questions, excerpts from her book that might figure into this conversation. And Dr. Francis is also aware that there are a number of students present here from Cape Breton University who are studying children's rights and who have given some thought to these themes and questions, but who will hopefully also directly pose questions to Dr. Francis. So we will make sure that there is time to bring everyone into the conversation. So I would propose to start, Dr. Francis, with some initial questions about your family and childhood. Growing up in Whitney Pier and the role of informal support structures. Our theme this morning is building caring communities for children. And I'd like to invite you to reflect on how your childhood, how growing up in a multicultural community set the stage for your amazing career. And you do refer to the Whitney Pier years many times in the book.
Before I begin, I just want to say thank you to Reverend Marsh and to Tom here for arranging all of this, along with the publishing company Nimbus. I am very honored to be here, to be back home in Whitney Pier. I always say that I must go home to Whitney Pier and share with everybody my career and how successful it was, and I'm very grateful to God for that. So I offer again my thanks and the Polish Hall and all of you for coming out. When we were parking the car here, I'm looking, I'm saying, oh my gosh, I didn't expect all of these people, but I'm glad. So thank you very much. It's quite an honor to be here. To talk about Whitney Pier and the impact it's had on my life and my family and friends is very easy for me to do. Whenever I was asked whether I lived in the United States or I was living in Toronto or Halifax, people say, where are you from? I say, Whitney Pier, and they go, well, what is that? And I'd say, oh, it's in Nova Scotia. Well, what part of Nova Scotia? I'd say Sydney. So I've never, ever denied that I was from Whitney Pier. And I know some people who don't say they're from Whitney Pier, but anyway, I have nothing to hide about that. I believe that you don't hide your background. Whatever it is, you be proud of it. And I always said that Whitney Pier gave me the foundation for who I am today. My family, yes, my father was Father Francis, and my father was from Cuba, my mom was from Antigua, so I'm a first generation Nova Scotian, first generation Canadian, first generation Whitney Pier person. And I have to say, growing up in a community of Whitney Pier that was multicultural before that term came into view, right? Because that's where we all were from, and I say that in the book, listing all the places that people were from growing up in Whitney Pier. Do I say we were perfect? Absolutely not, we were not perfect. However, we focus on what the positive aspects of growing up in Whitney Pier were. And I would say that my parents were adamant about education, that was nonstop. And it wasn't just my parents, it was all the immigrants, people. Because they wanted their children to have a better life or an easier life. And so that was the emphasis. And I grew up with the understanding of respect for other people, okay? And you also grow up with the understanding of compassion and caring and obedience, because I could remember being a minister's daughter, there were certain things that we weren't allowed to do. But I was curious, you know what I mean? So I had to start sort of just myself finding things out, and then, you know what? People would call my father and say, guess what? Your daughter is blank, right? So you go home and you can't lie because the neighbors all saw you. So you are punished. But neighbors really cared, communities cared. And sometimes it's not like that anymore, it's kind of changed. But I would say those were the positive things that I experienced growing up in Whitney Pier. And I always talk about how there was so much caring because people exchanged foods. You know, you got to eat Polish food, you got to eat West Indian food, so you had all this sharing. So when I left the Pier and lived in Halifax, I said, wow, I was in a dreamland, because it's not like that anymore, it's gone. But the foundation was there and it wasn't going to change me.
Thank you. And just sort of an example of the warmth in your book, there were spies everywhere reference on page 29. I wonder if you wanted to read a few sentences from that page.
Sound paranoid. We were expected to go to school and return home immediately when school was finished. Hanging out with friends was a non-starter. One day, I stopped at a friend's house without permission from my parents. When I finally arrived home, there was no point in lying. One of the neighbors told my parents where I was before I reached home. Then there were spies everywhere. My parents were not happy with me. I had disobeyed them. You must always set an example. You are the minister's daughter, and we expect better from you. Talk about guilt. I carried their words into adulthood. There were certain things from my childhood that I cannot forget. I was repeatedly told how I must behave. I could either do the opposite of what my parents expected, or do as I was told. I chose the latter with no regret. Was it difficult? Absolutely. But deep in my heart, I knew they were right.
Thank you. In reflecting on your career and your achievements, my students and I had just a wonderful conversation, but sometimes a solemn conversation. And my students in particular were interested to know about the barriers you faced, including racial discrimination, how you developed strength and resolve, and how you would communicate that experience today to young people in order to inspire them.
There's no doubt or no debate that my career has been successful. But there were a lot of barriers that I had to climb over and fight through, only because of the color of my skin. And that was very challenging. And I will say that there were times that I wanted to give up. And then I would reflect about my parents and education. And then I would also reflect on my belief in God. I never hid the fact that I'm a very faithful, spiritual person. And so I would pray a lot. And because the one thing that I would not allow racism or discrimination to do, and that is to break my spirit. Because once the spirit is broken, you're not going anywhere. You have to keep the confidence in yourself, who you are, you have to love yourself. And that's what I did. If I'm a child of God, then I have to love myself. And then I am a special person placed on this earth for a reason. And that reason was to carry out what I've been asked to do. And that is to promote compassion, to be kind, to also build on the talents that I was given, and to work hard. And that's what I did. Was it easy? The answer is no. I'm not going to say it was clear sailing through, it was not. And I give you an example one time when I was in Toronto, and I was having a really difficult time at work, and the difficult time was a result of the color of my skin. And I came home one night and I just sat on my bed and I just said, I can't do this anymore, I don't want to do it. And tears came down my cheeks and I just sat there and I closed my eyes and I put my head back on the pillow and I heard this voice say, stop doing this. And I remember I sat up and I said, am I losing my mind? And then it said, you're doing too much, you're making yourself too difficult. And then I got up and I walked around and I said, something's happening here, I'm losing it. Then it dawned on me, I said, that's a message. You're not supposed to give in. And I didn't. And so it was almost like these new ideas kept coming to me about how to manage. But it is not easy, and I'll tell that to all the students. Just do not allow your spirit to be broken. You have the talent, you study hard, you work through it. You will know when you should stand up and raise the issue, or when you should sit down and not raise it. But the bottom line is you need to stay strong. Do not allow yourself to be broken, because you'll find your allies. And there are people you can talk to privately who will encourage you. There are probably laws and policies in place, but there's always allies. I've been very fortunate. I had a lot of mentors. I also had what I called godparents. And godparents are people who are behind the scenes helping you in some way. And when I say helping you, because I remember this particular person in Ontario, and I only met the person maybe once or twice, but they saw something in me, and all of a sudden they were sending me to programs on policy development, things that would help me as I climbed the ladder. And I'll always remember that. So there are people behind the scenes who see things in you that you may not even see in yourself. And that's why I say, don't allow yourself to be broken. Stay strong.
Beautiful. In your public roles, and also in other roles, so in your role as Lieutenant Governor, CEO of the Nova Scotia Human Rights Commission, even in your time working on Wall Street, and through your eloquence and actions, you motivated Nova Scotians to try to live up to the ideals of our society. What are the burdens and responsibilities of anyone who serves in a public leadership role, as you did, and as you still do in many ways, in terms of bringing out what Abraham Lincoln called the better angels of our nature? And can you briefly paint a picture about the kind of caring society you would like to see? What responsibilities do public figures have toward children and youth in particular?
Way back in 2002, I think it was, when I was a student at Ladd School of Theology, and I wrote a paper, and the paper was talking about spiritual leadership. And what I said at the time, because it happened shortly after 9/11, whatever that year was there, and I said that during that period of 9/11, you saw everybody was going to church, the leaders were going into church and praying, etc. And I said, I hope that continues, because I'm not saying that as a leader and you're strongly religious that you're trying to convert people. That's not what I'm doing. I really do believe that if you act in a way of caring and compassion and honesty and integrity, then you're clearly showing some of the value systems that spiritual leaders would have. So we are living in a society now that is extremely challenging. We all know that. And now we have the coronavirus, which is a health issue, but it can also turn into a social issue as well. It is a social issue in some respects, because when the virus started, people started discriminating against Chinese people right away. It was immediate. So it's almost like you have these hidden hatred pieces in you that surface when incidents occur. And so I believe that leaders must show strong integrity, they must show compassion and kindness, and they must be able to lead with honesty. But at the same time, when they are being honest, they're also showing a way that they will help you, because sometimes the honesty does hurt. So how are you going to help community? And whenever I'm talking to people, I always say, I'm looking back at our next generation. Because they're the people, because as you get older, you realize your life gets shorter. I may not be here in 20 years. And if I am, who knows what state I'll be in. So what about those people that you expect to be here in 20 years? These young people. We have to start looking at our youth. And I always find that strong leaders know when to step back and say it's time for new leadership. And you're there in the background, helping out with your wisdom. But I think we have to start looking at our youth and planning and making sure that our country is going to be good for our youth. And unfortunately, we know the effects of climate change and what's happening. But you do have young people speaking up. The little girl from overseas who's just been a true role model in terms of her fight against environmental conditions. So I think that we have to start, we want to set examples for our youth, for them not to go through what we have created. You know, we have our indigenous youth, we have our black youth, we have our brown youth, we have immigrants coming in. We have to be a country of, something like how I grew up, with the acceptance and the kindness to people. And it's looking at individuals of their strong spirit and who they are. But I want to see our young people be given opportunities and to show what they can do, because I'm so convinced that a lot of our young people are very creative. And I don't want them to experience criticism, whether it's, I said, as a result of color or sexual orientation or disability. We have to accept and be kind. So that's how I see leadership. And I wrote a paper, as I said, years ago, and that paper would still be effective today, because in the paper I named Malusa, the young lady who was shot in the face, and then I named, of course, Martin Luther King, who was a leader, and and some of the things that he fought for, we're still fighting for. And then I named my dad as well in that paper. And since then, there's been so many other leaders that are showing the example of what a leader should be. And yet there's a lot of leaders to show an example of what leadership should not be. But we should outnumber those. And that's a lot of work. But if we train our young people, our youth, with good values, I think they can do that.
Dr. Francis, why is child poverty such a persistent problem in Cape Breton? And what should we as concerned citizens be doing at this time to be part of the solution?
I was reading the report and I was sad when I read it and said, wow, there's so much problems in Cape Breton, where you're from. And I think that we all have a role to play in this, because child poverty impacts children in a way that could stay with them for the rest of their life. And that's not what we want. Government has to play a role, absolutely, no problem with that at all. But we also have to be, as community, caring. You can start doing programs yourselves that would help young people, whether it's programs in education, whether it's programs in sports, whether it's programs in food safety. There's so many ways that communities can help. And I think it's important, because you have to build up the esteem of these young people who are experiencing poverty. And growing up, we certainly were not wealthy. I can tell you that right now. But we were all the same, but at the same time, I always felt we were wealthy in some way, but we weren't. And it was only when I went away I realized, gee, and I was studying, I said, wow, I had no idea I was so low class. I'm serious, because I was doing sociology. But I thought it was good because we all cared for each other. My mom, whenever we outgrew our clothes went to our neighbors. And she made sure they were always in good shape. It wasn't anything she was just throwing off or anything like that. And so it was, communities have a way to involve. If you have somebody who's in your community who's a leader, who's doing well, I would hope that they reach back to help, right? In some way to help. And it doesn't take that much energy. But I think if we're going to care about our youth, then we all need to play a role.
My students have been studying Ken Robinson's book, Creative Schools. And I know through your various roles, you've spent a lot of time with educators, with students. You wrote a children's book. You mentioned in your most recent book also how the role of Lieutenant Governor, you essentially developed curriculum material. You developed a book for that purpose, which went over very, very well. So you've thought a lot about learning and lifelong learning and how people learn effectively. Ken Robinson is concerned that despite the presence of outstanding professionals, schools are still not really structured to bring out the whole person and to cultivate creative energy. So in his view, we still follow an industrial model of education. In your reflections on education, what conclusions have you come to about what makes a great school? What should we be doing now?
Very complex question. I love this. Ken, he's wonderful. If you look at his TED Talks, it's very powerful. The way I was raised and attended school, it cannot be the same as it is in 2020. Things have changed. I'm very grateful for my education. I was educated by nuns, and I from grade 1 to grade 7, and then I failed grade 7, but I wasn't with the nuns at the time, and when I failed grade 7, I just about lost everything because I could not believe that I would fail. But as I say in the book, I made a vow that that will never happen again. It didn't. So my parents immediately put me into Don Bosco school, and by the time I came out of grade 9, I was in the top 3. So I was determined, and that was it. But anyway, what I see now in the education system is not sensitive to youth. And what I mean by that, there is no sensitivity towards Black youth, Indigenous youth, brown youth, and just youth in general. Because I think young people are very creative. And I'm not so sure if the school system allows that right now. And when you hear about Afrocentric learning, there's a reason for that. Because when I was in school, I didn't know anything about my people. Okay, that was my parents who had some books and will tell you about it, but there was really no learning. And I just heard on the radio about a month ago that the Indigenous history is going to be embedded into the curriculum, which is about time. And which is so important, you know, and I would hope that someday, and should have been a long time ago, that the history of Afro-Canadian people, what they've done for this country and for Nova Scotia, be incorporated into the curriculum as well. Not that it be a choice, it's in the curriculum, right? And I also think that the school system has to understand that with today's environment, you know, you have to have programs that are going to be sensitive to what's happening. Innovation. You have all of these social media. How do students deal with that? What are some of the ways that you're going to work with students when it comes to this, right? So I think that we have to start looking at individual creativity of students, because not every student will learn the same way, right? Not every student will learn the same way. Maybe some students learn when they draw things. What is wrong with that? Find some way to develop that and have the children be able to expand on that. So we have to start looking how we are educating our children. I'm not saying it's totally wrong, but there are clearly things wrong with it. And you have to also look at who's doing the instructions, who are the teachers. And the teachers themselves have to know who they are, and they have to be teaching without biases, and they have to be truly understanding of the young people that you're teaching. And there has to also be clear connection to students who have disabilities. And how do you enhance these students? And I want to give a story about what happened to my grandnephew who has serious disabilities. His name is Evander, and he's so cute. And he's a child that is always smiling and happy. is in school. He's a special school, and he's not verbal, other than he makes noises, but he's always smiling, and he has a little bit. I think he hears, because when I go to him and say, "This is Aunt May May," don't any of you call me May May, but anyway, he calls me Aunt May May, and he'll look like this, you know. So I know he's hearing. Anyway, the other day at his school, they gave him an award. They gave him an award because he makes everybody smile. It was so cute. So there it was, this big award, and they were wheeling him into the gym, and all the students were clapping, and they were hugging him, and they gave the award because they said that he's taught us how to be accepting of somebody like him. Because he just makes everybody happy. He's always smiling, and everybody smiles when he's smiling. So, I mean, that was a very positive thing to see. So this is what I'm saying. You have to be able to recognize something that is positive as we're going along in young people, regardless of whether they're able-bodied, whether they're different colors, whether they're disabled. You have to recognize, because everybody has an obligation to do that.
Thank you. How has Nova Scotia changed because Marianne Francis was and is a public servant? And what aspects of your work do you think are incomplete? What causes or projects are you still intending to carry forth? Would you like to see others carry forth?
I don't know if the place has changed because of me. If you say so. There will always be work to be done. There's no question about that. I mean, one person could open doors for change. I, as head of the Human Rights Commission, as ombudsman for the province, as a lieutenant governor, I would hope that there is some change in terms of people who may have looked at people with different color as not being able to do things that are powerful. I would hope that is one aspect that's a change. I'm also somebody who will speak up when I see an injustice, especially if I've experienced that injustice. And it's speaking up to bring change. And I am always willing to help people, whether it's quietly behind the scenes or whether it's out front. I think that is so important. And as I said earlier, as you get older, you realize your life is getting shorter. And so when you realize your life is getting shorter, then you start saying, you know what, I got to start working with younger people sometimes, and then gathering up people around your age group to say, look, why don't we do this for our youth or something like that. So you do your best to set examples. And I have to say that I did not think when I was in my 20s that I would end up being an author. I certainly wasn't thinking that. Not that I love authors, but I didn't think that I would be one. And when I decided to write my memoir, I wrote the memoir with the hope of the book educating people, or the book giving people courage, or the book giving people energy, inspiration, to carry out their own dreams, even though they are going to hit barriers. So I believe that this is something that I was designed to do in terms of hoping to bring about change. And I hope that's what it does. I had a comment not too long ago from a woman who read the book, and apparently her sister loaned her the book. And she wrote her sister and said, that book came at the right time, just as I'm waiting to have surgery. This has really inspired me to have a much more positive outlook. And she said, I wish I knew her, I wish she was my friend. Brought tears to my eyes. So I wrote her sister and I said, if she ever wants to talk to me, she can. Because it's giving people encouragement and inspiration and courage. And obviously that's what she found from the book. So that was my hope. So I'm hoping that in some way my positions have impacted some people positively. Even if I don't know about it, but it's positive that they're moving forward for making our society and our communities a better place, a stronger place, because that's what we're here to do. And I'd like to know that you leave that legacy behind for people to carry goodness forward.
There are so many brilliant and beautiful excerpts in this book, but I wonder if you might consider reading from page 193, where you explain, this memoir has helped me to bring to the surface feelings I have hidden for a long time, and then you go on to express your hope for the reader. So it's sort of a beautiful reflection on introspection, but also, as you have always done, thinking about others.
Without my foundation and my spiritual beliefs, I am not certain if I would have been able to manage the many storms and barriers I faced along my journey. My faith in God is my shield and my armor. The road was not always easy, but I am proud to stand. This memoir has helped me to bring to the surface feelings I have hidden for a long time. While memories of some events are painful, I had to face them if I wanted to heal. For me, life is about forgiveness, love, respect, courage, kindness, empathy, honesty, compassion, giving back, and helping others. It is my hope that my story will inspire you to realize that you can bypass barriers and reach your goals. Hard work, continuous learning, and belief in oneself will eventually yield positive results. You must never give up. You must not allow anyone to take away your dignity or break your spirit. For those people who are angry or who perpetuate hatred, which can manifest itself in many ways, I hope you will go deep within your heart and minds and evaluate who you really are and ask the question, why am I this way? What do I need to know to be a better human being? Only the truth can set you free.
May and Frances, you really are a blessing to our community and our province.
Thank you.
As promised, we'd like to bring others into the conversation. And who would like to start? There's a lot to reflect on there, I know.
I do believe mothers that have children are children. As Nan Francis just mentioned, some children need a push. I don't mean to push for children or not that push, but a push to help them see things. They have friends. Oh, I can do that. Why should you do that? Because that person wants the other person to be just like them. But you have to have a strong mind. And if that's the way you feel and you want to get through life, that will help you to get through life. Just because one person do that, you don't have to be a follower. There are some parents are followers. What can they teach their child or their children? Can't teach them anything. And then, kids, they're looking for role models. Definitely they do. And a good role model or models. And you'll be surprised how or where that child will go from there or children. And that's what a child needs, or children. Or we get some friends, could be going to a dance, and the person on stage sings, and you'll hear someone in the background, but I can do better than her, or I can do better than him. Don't tell me that. Show the world what you can do. Show your life. Don't worry about what I think. Or what I think doesn't make much difference anyway. But if that's what you want, you don't have to worry about imperfect, whatever. You're going to do what you want to do. And you're going to stand up for what you believe in. Don't let anyone or one crush your spirit. Because if that ever happens, you are through. You
Okay, you're gonna write your next book, right?
And that's how I speak with my children from young. And I'm sure God will do the same way. It's over. See what I mean? And I have a great teacher, God rest her soul.
Your mom?
No.
No?
My grand.
Granny, yeah, okay, yeah.
And it's not a day go by, good luck or bad weather, and I can vote for her anytime. And a lot of people say to me, you must be having a good teacher. I say, yes, the best. And money can't buy that.
Well, that's an example of, I guess, the strength of families. Whether it's your mom, your aunt, or your dad, or whatever, it's the foundation that helps build you. So that's a perfect example. So thank you, Mom.
Thank you, Monica. I think I saw a hand going up in this area. Okay. Stephen Augustine. Stephen is the Vice President of Indigenous Relations for Cape Breton, Indigenous Education for Cape Breton University, and head of Unamalki College.
I was impressed by your aide de camp that you had working with you. Can you speak about that situation?
My aide de camp?
Yes.
Oh, yes. I had good aide de camps when I was in office. And aide de camps are volunteers. They're either RCMP, military, and there are also some Halifax police officers and Sydney police officers as well. And aide de camps were very, very good. They were extremely good to me. I have to say that it was a feeling that you miss. There's one aspect you miss because they were always paving the way for you. I have a retinitis pigmentosa, so that's a disability for my eyes. I don't have peripheral vision or depth. And I always said to people when I was in office, my staff had to know that. So the RCMP or the aide de camps, they knew that. So, and do you all know what RP is? Retinitis just no? That is a disease of the eyes where you lose your peripheral vision and your depth vision. And you end up having tunnel vision. And you also, if the room is dark, you're more apt to be bumping into things and falling over things because you just can't see when it's dark. So all the aide de camps always made sure if they went someplace, no, we want lights on. And we always had signals, and this is the first time I'm telling people about that. When we were walking into a room, we would have signals to make sure that I knew that there was a chair in front of me. So we had hand signals, so they were good, you know. And, and people were wondering, why do we want bright lights on? But that's why, because I can't see in the dark. And having your aide de camps were like, they were your eyes for you. And also, anytime, usually we didn't need aide de camps to go into a store, but the driver of the limo would come into the store with me. And I think I say that in the book, that as Lieutenant Governor, I said for 5 years I felt the freedom of shopping in the store without being followed or being suspicious, because they knew that the man who was following me, that I had to be somebody. So nobody paid attention. I wasn't ignored or anything because my driver, and at one time I went in with an aide de camp, and they always come with me. They're not nosy to see what I'm buying. They're behind me. So, so the stores all felt safe. Somebody else is following her, we're not following her, and we know who she is. But the aide de camps are very special people, and they really have to know and understand the role of lieutenant governors. And the ones that I've had are still with the current lieutenant governor, and they've been there for a while, so they're pretty good. Yeah, they're wonderful people. And I even had Indigenous aide de camps too. It was really very special, so it was nice. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, and the floor is open again.
Father Maroon. Father Maroon.
Yes, Father Maroon.
I just want to
Hello,
thank
Father.
you.
How are you? It's been a while. Everybody knows Father Maroon. That's a leader.
I just want to thank you very much for being here with us all these years. Now, you come from a great family. I knew your father and mother
wonderful people. So I don't give you full credit for everything that you've done. And in spite of the fact that the blacks were sort of the bottom part of the society, the great multicultural society we had in Cape Breton, you rose above that, and you realized that education was very, very important. And so you sacrificed many years to get the good education that you did get. So I admire you. You went to the highest, I wouldn't use a political word because it's not as nice as I'd like to say what it was, the highest sociological and whatever position that a person could go to in Nova Scotia. You were the lieutenant governor. And you had that role with dignity and with openness, and you never forgot your roots, which were strong down here in a multicultural society led by people like your father and mother. And that was a wonderful thing that I thought that you were doing, and I really appreciate all the work that you have done so far. And it gives us a hope that we can build upon what we come with. You come with, of course, your environment and your parents and so on, but you have to build on that. And that's your goal, is to find out what you're good at and maybe pursue that, and that's what you did, and very successfully. And I praise you and your family which supported you all those years, and the work that they did here in here. When I grew up, the black people were not very much welcome in the city. There was only the Kennedys, which lived behind the house there on Townsend Street.
Call that going over town.
Yes. And Dr. Calder, they couldn't keep him away because he had money. He was a black doctor here and very prominent. But that's changed all while, and now the blacks are free to go wherever they want to. And I was just, as a Lebanese, son of a Lebanese immigrant, I was discriminated against in school by my schoolmates and my teachers and so on, because there was an evening church. So I hope that I rose above that. And considering child poverty, that is a very great problem here in Cape Breton right now. And I'm a member of the Nova Scotians for Equalization and Fairness, which we're fighting for a just remedy for this poverty that we find ourselves here in Cape Breton, the highest child poverty in Canada, and the highest unemployment rate, the highest of all the bad stuff and the lowest of all the good stuff, and that's because of a government deficiency. So we should all work for equalization and pray that that be forward in our thinking, that we become equal with Halifax and other regions that are better off than us. But I thank you for all the work that you have done, and I appreciate the effort you put into it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Young Stevens, nobody's asking questions from the youth. Oh, there's hands up.
Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
So first thing first, I want to say thank you for being here and sharing your thoughts with us. We really appreciate that. So
Sorry, the microphone goes as far as Stephen Augustine.
So first of all, we really want to thank you for being here and sharing your thoughts with us. So I have one question. Do you think that the current legal structure in our education system is really respecting children's rights? We all know that children have the right to study. It's really good. And do you think that they could have any more rights in education? And if not, is there any ways to enhance our children's rights? Thank you.
Thank you.
Laura. Thank you.
How does it feel being up front? I think that, as I said earlier, we're in 2020 now, and I think everything has to be looked at and reviewed in terms of, is this appropriate and is this the right strategy for the current situation? And that includes education. So I do believe that there are many areas that are probably deficient, other areas that are weak, other areas that don't include things. So I think there is time for reviewing what is happening in our educational system, and I don't know if we do that. I don't know if we look and see what success. You might look and see success for people who have achieved well, but what about those people who haven't? What, did we miss something? You know what I mean? Did we tap into all the talents that these people have? That's a possibility. Because I don't know if the system is geared for that. And I don't know if the system ever was geared for that. I think I was fortunate because I had certain teachers who just focused in on me. And I think that you may not find that now because you have so much going on. Everything is fast, quick, and everything. A lot of people are just for economic reasons, right? But anyway, I would say that I think there's room for change.
Thank you. Reverend Dorothy?
Hi, Ann. Great to see you again.
Good to see you as well.
Yeah, a couple years ago, we were at a Women in Leadership breakfast or a lunch or something.
Lunch,
at
yeah,
AST.
yeah.
And,
Evening wear, it was the evening.
Evening, that's right.
Evening.
That's right.
Well, I mean, not evening wear, but it was.
Yeah, it was a great evening. We brought a bunch of women together in the area and talked about women in leadership. And I've been really interested lately in following some of what seems to be barriers around women entering politics. And that's been in the media lately in terms of how do we encourage more women to enter politics? And more women have been talking about systemic barriers around child poverty and around poverty, and how do we get those people in places where there is some political will and desire to do that. So I'm just curious what your thoughts about that. And how do we do that? How do we, I know you do a lot of work with young women and mentoring young women as well. How do we encourage them to follow that? What are some of the things that we can do?
Well, I think the whole issue of gender inequality is more complex than we want to realize. And I also believe, too, that when you hear talk about women in politics or women climbing the ladder, unfortunately, you're not including every woman. You're thinking more of white women. Indigenous women aren't included in that. Black women aren't included. Brown women. So I would like when people talk about gender that they make sure they say the inclusiveness of all women and not just one group of women. Because when you hear the Prime Minister say, I want my cabinet to be 50-50 women, 50 women, but I don't see any brown women or Chinese women or Indigenous women. We did see one. But it's something that I think that women themselves have to take a good look at in terms of, because I had great challenges when I was the Assistant Deputy Minister of Ontario Women's Director. I was the first black person to head up a women's organization, and that was quite challenging, I have to tell you that. So I think that women themselves have to sort of look at who are they looking at when they're talking about women. In terms of women in politics, yes, we need more women in politics, all women in politics. And I do believe that women need to themselves gather together and support one another, whether it's through finance, whether it's through morally, whatever it is. Women have to be the strength behind that woman to move forward. And when women want to take on roles in government, they truly have to understand the system. And they have to understand the challenges of those systems, and you cannot change it overnight. So you have to have many women prepared, because the one woman who gets in can start making the change. When that woman is pulling out, then you have to have other women behind her who's going to continue on with that change. So we're talking about long-term strategy here. We're not talking about something we get one woman in, well, we're happy. 2 women are in there, we're glad. What about the others? And as I said, and you're still looking at them with the diversity of women, not just one set of women going through. And, and there's been things that happen, which I'm not going to go into now, of some women who have made it there. And then they push for change, but it's the way they push for change that causes their downfall. So that's what I'm saying, there's a strategy, not saying that they were wrong. I'm just saying it's the strategy, because don't forget, the structure was put together by men for generations. You're not pulling it apart overnight. You need to understand that. It's going to take time, but you have to have that plan in place for the various women to be prepared to take it on. And you're not going to have homogeneous women. Don't think that you're going to have everybody who's all liberal, who's all NDP, who's all PUC. It's not going to happen. And you have to respect that. Because I do think that women, we have different perspectives on things and how we look at things, and there are some who don't have a different perspective. So you can't tear them apart because that's how they think. So we have to look at long-term strategies and understand the structure. Last year, I was the MC for Angela Davis, who was a very strong, radical black woman back in the 60s and 70s. Very powerful, brilliant philosopher, everything. And she said, if you think you're going to make change overnight, it's not going to happen. And when she said that, we all just sort of sat up and said, oh my gosh. But she's right. You think about it, because she said the structure is thousands of years old. And it's going to take time, but you can do those subtle changes and keep going as long as there's the legacy behind you who's going to continue on with those changes. And she said, don't give up, but leave that legacy for others to follow. And so, does that help?
Thank you.
Thank you. My question is, do you think the community here were good to you because you were the pastor's daughter when you were growing up? And was there a time that because of your skin color, you were abused? And how did your parents act? How did they, reacted to that?
I have to start reflecting now. Let's see. I do think that in many ways, yes, I was treated a certain way because, not just me, my sister as well, because we were Father Francis's daughter. No question about that. I don't recall us ever being abused in Whitney Pier. I do remember going over town, and my father was able to get me a job in, we had a 5 and 10 in town, right? A long time ago. And I was bagging, I was at the cash register and putting things in bags. And it's in my book, I've talked about that in the book. And so there were some people at another cash register. One man looked up and he said, oh my gosh, look at that N person over there, right? And I never said anything, and I didn't go home and tell my parents. I just heard, I was only in the store like maybe for about 2 weekends, because it was the Christmas time hire. And anyway, that has never left me. And as I said, I don't remember being abused in the Pier. And yeah, my father did carry some weight. But even the other black people in the Pier, I don't remember them complaining of abuse, because I think the mere fact that my father was who he was, that sort of protected the community in many respects, because he had a lot of respect. He talked to politicians, police officers, your own parents, because if any of the parents' children did something wrong, there was a knock at my father's door. Dad, would you come down and talk to so-and-so, this type of thing, right? But I can't recall that abuse taken place. Maybe another person might say, well, they were, but I just don't recall that. And it was, as I said, I have no regret in growing up in Whitney Pier or growing up in Cape Breton at all.
Thanks for the question, Mignola. And I saw that Selena had a question. I think Joe Riba has kindly extended the microphone, so we may be able to make it all the way to you.
I said, I'm loud enough anyway, you probably would have heard me back there. I wanted to ask you about an issue that has been, it's globally, so bullying. And I wanted to ask you, how would we as communities reach out to our own individual communities to the main sources of bullying, so at home, the parents, the guardians, and what we can do to work with them to improve bullying.
I'm so glad you raised that, because that is such a sad, complicated matter that has been going on a little bit too long. And the most recent, as we all know, about the young McNeil guy, who was bullied, and it's a miracle that he's alive when you see that video. And my message to him and his parents is that keep building up his self-confidence. Don't let what happened to him make him think that he's less than anybody else. But then you look at the bully, and you have to ask, why would he do this? Is there something in his life, in his family, in his home, at that age, to want to do this to this young kid? Pick him up and throw him down. That's near death. And do we have the systems in place to deal with the bully's situation? What is the situation in the school system that should be zero tolerance of any bullying at all? But at the same time, you have to analyze the bullies. And I think that community has to get involved as well. And there was some concern about people standing around not doing anything. They're standing around not doing anything for several reasons. Either they're enjoying what they're seeing, or they're afraid. Why are they afraid? Or they just don't care. And that, we have to start looking closely at these things and dealing with it. Because if we're not going to deal with the bullies, what type of world are we going to have as they keep getting older? Will their bullying manifest itself in ways that are so difficult to even change? So by the time they're adults. So I think this is something that everybody has to get involved in, whether it's religious community, political community, non-profit communities. We all have to get involved when you see this type of bullying. And this is the age group to deal with that now. And we have to look at ourselves. Are we doing something that would ignite our child to become a bully? Are we not showing enough love at home? Is there something going on in our own homes, in our own life, that's doing this? Because this is wrong. And it's not just a situation that happened to the young McNeil child, but this is something that's been going on a long time. And I would often like to see the trace when you talk about violence against women. And CBC has been doing stories on violence against women for the last week or so. And to hear some of the things, you can't help but wonder, what is in the background of the man who's generating this violence against his wife or his partner? Can you trace it back? Was this person a bully at some point? And to hear the violence against women, which I dealt with when I was head of the Ontario Women's Directorate, and now this is 2020. And it's worse. One of the stories that they talked about on CBC was the man who chopped off his wife's hands. And you think about that. He's in jail. This happened in Russia, actually. And, you know, when he gets out, what's going to happen? So we need even stricter penalties. We need psychological help. There's so much. So it's not just the bullying. Does the bullying lead to violence, other forms of violence? I would say yes. So all of this has to be dealt with ASAP. Thank you.
Thank you. Chester Borden. Chester Borden, Executive Director of the Whitney Peer Youth Club.
Good morning, Rayanne. Good morning, Rayanne. How you doing?
Fine, Chester, nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Chester, I know you have a loud voice, but I wonder if you could meet the microphone.
We mentioned child poverty. 1 in 3 kids living in poverty. It's a really daunting challenge here. You talk about systems. Example of justice system. We have no problem paying $110,000 to $140,000 to incarcerate a kid for a year, but we put nothing in prevention. I've been involved in youth for over 30 years. I see very little money put into prevention. How can we flip that switch?
I think you're absolutely correct, and I think it's something that community has to keep the pressure on government. The government is the one that has that power to make that switch. And I think community has to be able to be strong in that, strong towards the police. And I remember growing up when the police were always at our house. And a lot of it was talking about some of the children they were having issues with, but they were talking to my father about it. And my father would end up talking with the children. I don't recall them putting them in jail. I could be wrong on that, but I just didn't know at the time what it was all about, but then I see, but it was reaching out. So my father had his involvement through the church. And Whitney Pier, when I was growing up, was a place full of churches. I don't know if anybody grew up. You grew up here, every corner was a church just about. You wouldn't remember, you're too young. But do you...
Still have vibrant communities.
No, but
It's still a blessing that
it's true.
the ones
There
that
was
have
a
stayed
lot.
open have.
Yes,
Sometimes it's been a
yes,
struggle.
yes, because on Hanker Street, we had the, I think it was the St. Nicholas Church on the Catholic Church, and then it was our church, and then further down was United. So there was, and Hanker Street is a small street, but every community.
Russian Orthodox Church.
Yes, that's right. They have their involvement in community, which has changed now. But I do, well, all of it's not changed, but I do believe that community has to put the pressure on government in terms of dealing with youth and prevention. You're so right about prevention. And prevention is what will keep the numbers down and what will help. Because some of these youths who are problematic are very bright, but there's issues. And then we have to find out and help prevent it and bring out the positive aspects of those youth.
So I'm conscious of leaving time for informal conversation. This has been a very rich dialogue, and fortunately, and maybe I should have disclosed this at the start, we have been recording, and I think this will be a valuable resource. I certainly will be going back on to listen to the answers and really to discern how this can help me in my life as a community person and as a person, period. Because I think this has been an incredible hour of conversation. I would like to defer to Reverend Phyllis Marsh to come forward for just some final reflections and also to more formally thank you, Your Honor, for the time that you have spent with us.
Thank you.
And please know that you are always welcome here, and we love you very much. Thank you.
The reason why I said that use your cane, swallow your pride, and you don't want to fall. Because falling is an issue. And you can get real fancy canes,
Listen, you should see the walking stick that I have, an African walking stick. And even this morning I thought, oh, she's going to mention about my cane. Do you want to know, this has been a blessing, a real blessing. And you warmed the cockles of my heart when you spoke about our community. And our community, in those days, it was, it takes a village. It takes a village. I mean, I could really understand when you said, if you did something wrong, you knew before you even got home, your parents were going to know about it. The other thing I want to mention is the people in our community. And I need to mention, I'm glad she's in the front row, I need to mention Miss Monica. Miss Monica is the the last person from Barbados in our community. And that's important to me because I see our community from years ago through Miss Monica. And I need to tell you, Dr. Francis, there is still some of that wonderful connectedness in our community. Don't tell him I said it, but Charles Shepherd is one of my best friends. He doesn't come around often, but you want to know something? I know that he's always thinking of me, and if I need anything, he's there for me. As well as his mom, and as well as you see Pam. Pam is so helpful to me. I mean, I don't need a cane when she's around. You know, but I just want to say, it's just wonderful to still have that feeling, because I was away for 42 years. And when I came back, it was like a culture shock to me, and I thought, oh, everything's changed. But the longer that I'm here, there's things that have stayed the same, and that's a blessing, and you spoke about some of it this morning. Are there any students left? Have they all left? Can you stand for a second, please?
Stand, Adrian. There we go.
I just hope that you heard the message from Dr. Francis this morning. She said, never give up. And I know that I'm with Kairos, a group that I've joined, and I've become aware of a lot of the struggles that you have, but I want you to know there's people in our community that love you and we support you. And when you hear from Dr. Francis, don't give up. I want you, every time that you have a struggle, to think of her words, okay? And Dr. Francis, I think what I heard from you, because I don't want to go over all the questions, but what I got from you personally is that I can't sit home in my house and be a part of the community. I have to come out. We have to come out. We have to work hard to attain the knowledge that we need to make change. We need to be active in making that change. And we need to support one another. We need to support one another. And I just thank you for being here this morning. You were a true blessing. You are a true blessing. And may God continue to bless you in your work.
Thank you very much. And thank you, because I know that you were the instigator for all of this, and it was, I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, a good person, because as soon as Nimbus, the publishing company, reached out to you, you were like instant, and all of a sudden I had all these dates marked. So I want to say thank you very much. It was really great, and I admire you for also getting Tom involved and basically saying, well, okay, this is what we're going to do, and there it is. So you're a good leader. Thank you.
But it's wonderful working with Tom and Reverend Allison. That's the connection that we have. There's one more thing I want to say to you. When we talk about it takes a village, I often think what Father Francis would say. Father Francis was our priest when I was growing up. And I don't think he saw me as priest material. But I often wonder what he would say if he was here, you know. But a lot of that is the roots. You know, like I remember being in church and thinking, oh my gosh, was he where I was last night, you know? But, you know, that's our roots. And also your mom. I don't like sewing, but I can tell you, I can sew a great hem. Every Tuesday, I think at 4 o'clock it was, we had to go to your home. And Miss Francis taught us the cross stitch.
Sewing
and whatever.
Everything.
And so if I had to, I'm too lazy, I would be able to hem something. But anyway, but again, it's a small thing, but actually ended up being a big thing because those things stay with us. So I just wanted to share with you that you are an inspiration. I just want to thank you for today, and this is just a little something to show that we appreciate you and your being here. Okay? We're not gonna. Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Let the conversations continue. Dr. Francis will be signing her book, An Honorable Life. There's still some more breakfast left, and I'm just really, really honored and humbled that our community came together this morning. God bless you. Good job, guys.